Okay, class. As I mentioned before, today we'll be looking again at Fiona Hall's work and using that as inspiration to create a installation of. So, first, how was this work displayed? We went to go see it last week on an excursion. So, how was it displayed? What is it?
It was displayed as an installation in the gallery we went to.
Yep, correct. Yeah. Okay, so and what was it made out of?
Driftwood.
Driftwood, correct. So that was the material component of the artwork. Now, thinking still in the structural framework, what signs and symbols were being used in this artwork?
That they were symbolic of animals.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now switching sort of to thinking in the cultural frame, what places and beliefs were represented in this work?
She was I think looking at art within the natural landscape.
Yes, yeah. And the landscape in specific she was looking at, do you remember that?
Well, I think, if I recall, because it was driftwood, it was around nature and the sea.
Yep, okay. It was based on a beach in New Zealand, on one of the Northern Islands.
Yeah.
Okay, and what beliefs was she trying to represent in this artwork?
I'm not sure about beliefs.
No, so we'll get to that in a bit. That's looking at the elements of art. We're looking at the beliefs that she represented.
That the things found in the landscape are elements of art in themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was trying to explain that nature can create its own art.
Okay.
So that's where she chose to use the driftwood from. Yeah. Okay, very good. So now thinking at the elements of installation art that you started with, what were some of the other elements that you can remember? So you already mentioned one, shape.
Oh, shape, yeah.
Any others?
Space.
Space, yep, that's one of the ones we mentioned. Others can include proportion, line, perspective.
Scale.
Scale, yes, very good.
What does line mean?
Line mean? So that's similar to, if you have a look at the copy here or up on the board, it's quite literally the lines in a work. So here we have some sharp lines and then some more sort of curved lines.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some of the ones you can identify in this artwork? So I just pointed out how line can be represented.
Mm-hmm.
Can someone give me an example of shape, perhaps?
Well, the whole, it's in a circle.
Yep. So that can also be seen as the space it's taking up.
Yeah.
So it's on a wall. And some of the other shapes you could identify is the driftwood taking the shape of animals.
Okay.
Different skulls and other animal body parts and so on.
And I find that, like, if you're talking about, I don't know if it's space or perspective, but they all seem to be fairly evenly spaced throughout the space.
Yeah. So that's another example. So one of the other works we've looked at with Fiona Hall's is this one, All the King's Men. So this one, the audience could quite literally walk through this space. That's another way to interpret what space is. Okay. Speaking of the audience, give me an example, if you can, of how these elements connect with the audience and the artwork.
How they connect.
So using the elements, we just mentioned one, space, they can walk through.
Yep.
What's another one we can think of?
Your perspective when you're moving through the space?
Yes, yeah. So for this one here, your perspective is at eye level with the heads. So you're staring directly into them. Yeah, correct. Very good. Okay, so that's enough, I think, for revision. So you have all these concepts in your head. Now we'll move on to the art making practice. Do you have a question?
No,
No?
sorry, sir.
That's alright. So for today, as I mentioned, you'll be working individually in this case, and you'll be working with these materials. So, don't go grabbing them yet, but so the subject matter will be replicating one of Fiona Hall's works as we've seen in past lessons. Doesn't need to be exact, it doesn't need to be explicitly related, but you're using her as inspiration for when you're making these. They must demonstrate at least one of the elements of installation that we've mentioned, as well as convey some type of connection to the audience. It doesn't need to be explicit, but just try and think about what we've discussed in class today. Okay, if possible, I'd like you to each make at least 2 different works, but we'll see what we get up to today. And if you want to try and push yourself, try and put maybe 2 different elements of installation art in one installation work. Okay, and then I'll get you to take photos and upload them later. Okay, go for it.
Alright.
So you can either choose to use all of one material, that might be one direction you take it in, or you might want to try and mix and match. So is this, how are you going with this one?
Good.
Good. So what element are you going to represent here?
Line.
Line. Okay. So how are you trying to represent line
Well,
in this
it's
work?
in a line,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it should be also to scale.
To scale. Now is it to scale or are you working with scale?
Oh, working on scale.
Working with scale. Okay. So yeah,
Alright,
you can
yes.
see progressive scale going from biggest to smallest. Now, one of the other ways we can think about this is depending on how you want to present this, it could be perspective. So it could be, if this is a giant scale artwork, it could be down there looking up and have a whole different...
Yeah.
Okay, so, but which element are you working with primarily on this?
I'd say line.
Line? Okay.
Yes, yes.
So again, as we mentioned in line, you're looking at the sort of the sharp edges here, and then, but you also have the sort of curved
Round, yep.
round. Yep, okay, very good. So what element of then the audience would you say you're working with? How is that connected? Doesn't need to be explicit, but...
On how all this is connected.
No, so if I was the audience coming in to view this work, what would the connection be?
Well, I think the connection would be line.
Line? Okay, so the audience would be coming in and viewing it in a line?
As a line.
Okay. Okay. How about you try and make another one? Maybe try using some of the shells,
Ooh.
and I'll come back to you in a bit.
Okie dokes.
How are you going over here?
Yeah. Sort of not sure if I'm heading in the right direction or not. But
Alright, let's see. So you've made this here.
Yeah.
What are you working with in this case? What elements of art?
so I started off looking at shape, as in
Yep.
a circle.
Yep.
And then I thought if we could put it somewhere at a level with the shell behind it, then people could look through it to get a different perspective on the shell.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
that way you're thinking about the audience as viewing through this to have perspectives.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So imagine this is, say, like a gallery. Where would the audience be standing when they're viewing this art?
On the side that you're
Is
on
that-
now.
okay.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if you'd have to have it on a table so that you could actually view through it more easily,
Okay.
or if you'd want participation of people getting at a funny angle. I'm not quite sure.
Okay, so and is this all one